Hi, everyone. Good morning, good afternoon, or good evening, wherever you're joining us from. I'm just going to take a few seconds while everyone joins. Thank you for being here today. Very briefly, I would like to introduce myself. My name is Malva Karandive, and I'm the Programs Manager here at SID United States. Welcome to today's event. This event is Driving Innovative Private Sector Engagement with USAID. A few things to note before we move on to our speakers for today in the USAID PSE team. If you are unfamiliar with SID United States, we are the largest and the most active chapter of the Society for International Development, an international network that was founded in 1957 to serve as a global forum for dedicated to sustainable economic, social, and political development. We serve as a global town square for the international development community, bringing together people from diverse organizations, disciplines, and career stages in a neutral, independent forum to share information and discuss important issues and challenges facing our community, as we are doing today. A few different ways that you can get involved with us. You can check out some of our upcoming events and sign up for a weekly newsletter at our website, which is www.sid-US.org. Join us at our annual dinner, which is happening on November 15th. You can apply to be a volunteer, co-chair, or work group associate with us and work more with us as well. Or you can follow us on social media and stay in touch with all of our different activity. A few things to note for today's event. This is a recorded session and it will be publicly shared, and the recording will also be shared with all attendees and registered attendees. Closed captioning is available and it can be activated through your own individual settings. If you have any questions for our speakers, please post them in the chat box. Please note if this is for a specific speaker. If our speakers are not able to answer them today, they will try to get back to you with some answers. And with that, I will turn it over to Cole Simcoe from the USAID team.
Great. Thank you so much, Malavika, and thank you so much to SID-US for having us today. As Malavika said, my name is Cole Simcoe from the PSE Hub. I'll be emceeing today's event. And as you can see in front of you, we have a great lineup for our fireside chat, and we have a bunch of people joining us from the implementing partner community to do some great breakout sessions. I want to start by noting one more thing, that the main session will be recorded, but the breakout sessions will not be recorded. So do keep that in mind. They are self-selected, and so they'll ask you to move into those sessions as they open. But first, I would like to kick it off and welcome one of my most esteemed colleagues, Katie Garcia. Katie is the Deputy Executive Director for USAID's Private Sector Engagement Hub. Previously, she served for the Bureau of Resilience and Food Security as the director of their private sector community of practice. And before that, in the Bureau of Food Security, she led efforts to engage food, agriculture companies, and develop and manage new private sector partnerships to promote inclusive market-driven development. So Katie's going to go ahead and kick us off with some opening remarks today, and then we'll move into our fireside chat. So welcome, Katie.
Thanks, Cole. Great to have everyone join us today. I am so honored to speak with you all today on the critical role of private sector that it plays in USAID's development work around the world. So as Cole noted, my name is Katie Garcia, and I am our Deputy Executive Director here in the PSE Hub and the Development, Democracy, and Innovation Bureau. I thought I should note, given this audience, what Cole didn't mention is that before my career at USAID, I actually worked with a large implementing partner, so have been on both sides of the equation, and I'm really looking forward to this conversation. So USAID continues to effectively tackle the most pressing global development challenges of our time. And in order to meet our partners where they are, we must increase our scale, scope, and effectiveness of our programming through the private sector. This is the central vision both in USAID's private sector engagement policy and our fairly new policy framework. So as all of you probably know, we have a long history of working with the private sector and have always had ways to do this for more than 20 years. So this includes the Global Development Alliance, which is now the private sector collaboration pathway, which has been instrumental in moving our operations forward in lockstep with our partners in the private sector. We have partnered with banks and financial institutions through the Development Credit Authority and now the Development Finance Corporation. And several of USAID's and the US government's flagship programs, including Feed the Future, Power Africa, and PEPFAR, are designed to rely heavily on private sector-led approaches that deliver greater and lasting results for partner countries to better target food security, energy, and health goals. So while USAID and our implementing partners continue to achieve great outcomes through partnerships, we all know that effective partnerships and market-led approaches are not universally understood or applied in our work across all sectors and regions. Further, and this is probably where a lot of your aches and pains come in, is the lack of systems that has resulted in confusion for outside partners, implementing partners, difficulty in navigating the right point of contact related to desired technical and geographic sectors, limitations and barriers, and getting new ideas started, and unfortunate feeling that collaborating with USAID creates a transaction cost on both for the private sector and for implementing partners. So following months and months of mission outreach and discussion with the technical and regional supporters, consultations with agency leadership, and outreach to USAID's most active private sector partners, the PSC Hub developed what we call PSC Modernize. So at its core, Modernize is a set of essential activities developed to enact USAID's PSC policy by further developing a modernized agency in which PSC programming is scaled and mainstream across all agency missions, sectors, and actors. So delivering on the PSC policy, USAID is building out and improving upon its systems and processes in human resources, data collection and reporting, capacity building, program implementation, and relationship management. The goal is not only to deliver on the PSC policy, but to make PSC easier and more effective for all staff and stakeholders. So many of these activities focus on internal changes to reform a range of critical functions and related systems that need to be adapted, strengthened, or built to create the pathway to scale the reach extends outward in all of the development community. So specifically, I want to highlight the importance of these activities through 3 pillars. First, elevating USAID's talent and capacity to engage. So this focuses on overall increasing PSC relevant knowledge and skills for current staff and transforming our hiring and role recognition, allowing for further innovation to ensure enduring PSC impact. Second, we are working to improve the partner experience. This includes the development of a holistic, whole of agency system that will enable USAID to more proactively manage our complex relationships with corporate partners and strategic industries. Including in this approach is investment in a customer-forward relationships through an invigorated global industry coordination network. And finally, we are enhancing the effectiveness of our engagement. And this means improving private sector engagement by collecting refined data sets, supporting innovative approaches, developing new tools, and capturing learnings to deepen understanding around sound PSC projects. We're also working to ensure USAID can easily engage the partners such as yourself. We recognize that implementing partners play a key role in advancing the PSC policy for the agency. USAID recognizes the important role the implementing partner community holds and the needs to ensure your involvement as we take next steps to enact private sector engagement at scale. We also understand the realities that internal reforms and institutionalization of PSC Modernize will take significant time to be tangibly experienced by those outside the agency, such as the implementing partner community. You may be left wondering, beyond the aspiration of PSC Modernize, what does this mean for me? What does it mean for my organization? And what is our role in PSC with USAID? That is why we underline the importance of convenings like this. We are excited to share our insights and progress with all of you, while also ensuring that we are here to listen to and learn from your experiences, with the goal of this being the first of many touch points with implementing partners to identify areas for coordination and harmonization of Modernize. I would be remiss if I didn't also mention that we are also excited to kick off our anniversary celebrations of the PSC policy, which launched nearly 5 years ago in December 2018. With that, we recognize our modernization journey, like any change, will require digging deep into the DNA of the agency. Engaging with implementing partner community more frequently will be critical to our collective success in achieving development objectives with businesses and whole industries and collaborators. So with that, I'd like to turn over to our moderator and my friend Ricardo Michel to speak with the PSC Hub division chiefs on our side, leading on PSC Modernize, to discuss the impact of each category has on implementing partners. So Ricardo serves as co-CEO at Palladium. He brings more than 25 years of experience in international finance and leadership in the private and public sector. So following his career as an accountant, investment banker, and development professional, Ricardo worked with us here at USAID under the Obama administration, where appropriately he led the growth of public-private partnerships of the agency. With this background, always bridging the finance, private sector, and development arenas, we know Ricardo can help bring and drive a candid conversation about PSA. So thank you all and welcome again, and over to you, Ricardo.
All right. Well, thank you very much, Katie, and good morning, good afternoon, and good evening as appropriate for those who are attending. I'd like to say, first off, thank you. Thank you for inviting me to host what's going to be, I know, the first of many good conversations, but this is a critical one. I think as Katie mentioned, it's really giving us an opportunity to learn as your partners, as implementing partners, a bit more about what does PSC modernization really mean? What does it look like? But more importantly, how can we play a role in helping advance that? And so through this conversation, I'd like to bring those things to bear. What I will say is it's also a privilege just to be here today. I'd like to sort of recognize and give kudos to the team. This journey of working with the private sector is a long-standing one, and I've had the privilege of playing a part in that. But it's good to come back and see how the team subsequent to my tenure here have taken the mantle and continue to move the ball forward. So this aspect, even though it's very much internally focused, is critical. One of the things that I want to make sure that we're bringing to light, but also at the same time balancing that with how you're reaching out to those of us who are working to get the work done. So with that, I'd like to turn the floor over to our three division chiefs to introduce themselves and talk a little bit more about their specific areas within PSC modernization, PSC Modernize, and then I'll turn over and ask them some specific questions. But today we have with us Temi Ifafore-Calfee, who will be speaking about her aspect, especially when it comes to the capacity building, building the talent, as well as the data. We have Meghan Majororwski, who's also going to be helping us understand her aspects, and of course, Adam Tomasek, a longstanding colleague, and I think he remembers some of the trouble we got back into when I was here. So I saved him for last because I want us to keep on track. But that said, please, Temi, over to you.
Great, Ricardo. Thank you so much for the warm welcome. I am Temi Ifafore-Calfee, and I oversee the evidence and capacity division. That is two teams. One team that looks at the workforce. What do USAID staff need to know in order to do more and help the agency do more and higher quality private sector engagement? And then the second is the evidence and learning team. And that piece of work is really, what have we learned? What do we know? What is the evidence telling us that works? Where are the areas that things kind of break down? And then how do we need to change our programming as a result? So through both of those streams of work, we're able to find out not only what is workers and what's their capacity, what's our staff's capacity to do private sector engagement, but then we also get a sense of the data. We get a sense of how many partnerships are we doing, where, in what areas. And then we also get great narrative that tells us, get stories from the field that give colors to those numbers. So we're super excited to talk to you today, and I'll hand it over to Meghan.
Great. Well, thank you so much for being here with us today. As Ricardo said, I'm Meghan Majororwski, and I am the division chief of the institutional innovation and support teams. They cover a range of really exciting functions, specifically a consultation desk, which is supporting, eventually supporting, we're in the process of launching that, the range of questions that our agency colleagues and PSC practitioners across all of our missions and bureaus and independent offices might have about doing PSE. Also operating the EDGE Fund, which was recently announced its first round, which is a 50 million catalytic fund to really demonstrate the impact of having just-in-time flexible funds to be able to opportunistically partner with the private sector to really drive enterprise-driven development. And then last, but certainly not least, our innovation team, which really focuses in on really promoting private sector engagement, innovation across the agency, and developing whatever tools and approaches and mechanisms are needed to catalyze that. and make sure that we understand what are the most exciting innovations worthy of replication, and that we've created tools and approaches to make that easier to replicate. So with that, I will hand over to my colleague, Ricardo.
Thank you, Megan. Thank you, Ricardo. Great to be here again. And as you said, I think we're known for getting into some good trouble as a luminary that we both respect once said. And hopefully we can get into some more of that as we go through today. It's a pleasure to be here. Adam Tomasek, I, along with Temi and Megan, lead the third pillar of the PSE Hub's portfolio, and it's really balanced between two things. One is the relationship management systems, and so there we're focused both on the technology systems that underlie what we do in terms of relationship management globally across all of USAID's operating units, as well as the people-centered side of what we do in terms of a new initiative that we stood up, or that the administrator stood up and launched on our behalf last year, the Global Industry Coordination Network, which really takes a refreshed look at the ways in which the agency essentially has direct strategic relationships with a number of corporate partners, but also builds out and expands in a really exciting way the agency's ability to engage with industries beyond just a company level, but looking across industries, understanding what are the trends there, what are they doing that's relevant to our development objectives, how can we be better engaged, better informed, and how do we bring that into then what the agency does across all of our work in terms of programming and policy work. The second part of the portfolio then is focused on what we call communities and influence. And here, that's a focus both internally and externally. Internally, we have a very active community of practice of private sector engagement practitioners, again, a global community, which has roots here in Washington, where we're trying to find the right ways to catalyze and motivate and influence better and more effective private sector engagement across the world. But then also on the external side, what is it that the agency is putting itself in a position to be more forward leaning on? How can we be better informed about where the trends within the business and industry world is going, and what does that mean to how we can help achieve development objectives? So a real balance between the internal and the external side, but the crux really there is how do we do relationships better?
Excellent, excellent. Well, I think you've each given us a nice little preview and a lot of things that we can dig into. So let's just jump right on in. So Temi, you talked about building the talent and capacity of the organization. One of the things I appreciate about USAID, it's big, it's decentralized, it's not monolithic, right? So that's not a small task. Can you talk a little bit more in detail about that ecosystem? Because when I think about us as an implementing partner, this is a great effort, but we're interacting at different levels, right? There's who writes the proposal, there's who evaluates the proposal, then there's who holds us accountable for implementing, right, the work, right? So the AORs, that entire ecosystem. Can you talk a little bit about how you're bringing them along to advance this effort?
Absolutely. So I think part of what we wanted to recognize, particularly in terms of the way that the agency does private sector engagement, is there are instances in which our staff, our USAID staff, are directly interacting with local partners, directly interacting with private sector companies. But we also have several models where USAID isn't really the closest one, because we are working with our implementing partners.
Mm-hmm.
They are the ones who are not only initiating contacts with the private sector, but we also find that our implementing partners are oftentimes implementing activities either to build the ecosystem to make things more favorable to do private sector engagement locally, or to help organizations along. We recognize that when you have instances in which you have any sort of contact with the private sector, we have to have certain things that work out. One of the things that we've learned over time is that when things break down, like we've asked ourselves the question, where do things get hard from the private sector's perspective? Where are the instances in which they no longer want to engage with us? And it turns out that there are a couple of instances. It's one when we can't align on shared values. It's when there's a breakdown in communication, and it's when, as you mentioned, the complexity of USAID and the timelines associated with that. Our implementing partners are absolutely key in that function, not only in terms of representing the work that we're trying to do, but also they're right there at where those pain points are. And so, as you mentioned, there are lots of different points at which implementing partners are trying to advance and enable us to be able to do more private sector engagement. And some of the things that we're working on include things like, what do our AORs and our COs need to know about private sector engagement? How can they bring that, create that spirit of innovation, that spirit of co-creation, that spirit of collaboration, not only in terms of making sure that we can do more creative things with the tools that are available to us, but then also helping to make sure that we are not perpetuating the idea that we can't talk to the private sector, that we can't have early conversations. And our thinking is that if we're able to get to the people that are the ones that control some of the, at the local level, in the missions, in the field, that's really gonna shift, that's gonna make your jobs easier, it's gonna make our implementing part, it's gonna make USAID's job easier. So with that, part of the thing that we've tried to do is develop a set of competencies. We said, how can we ask people to do things if we don't have a definition of what we're expecting them to do? So not only have we come up with a set of things that we said, we think all agency staff, regardless of if they're a CO, if they are a private enterprise officer, if they're a contractor, here are all the things we think anybody should know. And they should know 3 big things. They should know how to manage relationships. They should know and understand the agency's processes, and they should understand how we move money. If you have a sense of those 3 things, you have a good idea of how the agency works and functions, and then you can kind of translate that. I oftentimes see the implementing partners as translating USAID systems and processes for local private partners, for local stakeholders, and that's a very important role. The other thing that we realized that we didn't have was a good sense of how do we have kind of like service standards for ourselves in terms of how we manage those relationships, and really treating them with kind of the respect that they need and deserve to cultivate a long time relationship. And so we started working on this thing called One USAID. I'm not going to talk too much about that because that might come up a little bit later, but it's this idea and concept that every single one of us is representing one organization. This isn't my relationship, it's ours. And so bringing that shared sense of collectivity, working on making sure staff know what's expected, but then also really trying to focus on certain groups of folks that we know are where some of the pain points have been. So we are looking at working with COs. We are making sure that there are trainings specifically geared and putting in the incentives for our COs to get additional learning credits by taking courses about how to engage and interact with the private sector. So those are some of the things that within that ecosystem that we're trying to do.
Excellent. Thank you, Temi. And those sound like what needs to be done. And I think as the implementing partners, we're going to be more than happy to hold you accountable on the ground to let you know how that's working.
Yeah.
But look, let me pick up on the theme. You mentioned about the translation and implementing partners being translated. Look, at the end of the day, we're all doing this work really to drive results. And I'd like to get your sense of how do we as implementing partners, or where do we as implementing partners fit in your ability to collect more pertinent, accurate information around private sector engagement, its effectiveness in driving towards those sustainable results.
So I think there are a couple of different things that I think are 2 areas where I see a huge opportunity to influence things. One of which is oftentimes we are telling our story through numbers. And one of the big areas is we're always trying to make sure that we can trust them, that the numbers are clear. And I think that the private implementing partners in particular are the ones who are doing a lot of the reporting. And so oftentimes they're providing the information, they're providing reports to our mission colleagues that then get folded up and visualized. And this is what we're using to be able to, that's how we can say, we know that we have almost 800, the number of partnerships that we have in XYZ countries and leveraging XYZ billions of dollars. And so there's a huge space for the data quality, the being able to pull out the rich stories and highlighting instances in which we are changing lives, where it's not just, hey, by the way, we've met our targets, here's what we've done. But we said, hey, guess what? We made a difference for the cocoa farmer. We made a difference for girls learning and primary school education. We've been able to tell that impact story along the line through our partnerships and through our engagement. We've created a more enabling environment so that certain partnerships can move forward where before, there were barriers. So I think one has to do with the data, helping tell that story, pull that out, highlighting instances in which the effort and the things that we're able to do with the private sector are really showing. And then the second is, we're constantly trying to figure out, is our theory of change, does this make sense? If we do X, Y, Z, and I think that oftentimes one of the areas that we don't get a chance to come back to is we have assumptions going into things when we start to do our work. And I think our implementing partners are the ones to help us validate, yes, because we did this, and they help us tell that continual narrative story. So those are two areas where I really see the implementing partners making a huge difference in terms of what we're trying to do.
Excellent. So again, as we hold you accountable, you can hold us accountable,
Yeah,
to not just tell you the numbers, but more importantly, the impact
Mhm.
that it's driving, and then maybe getting at some of that additionality question around the private sector engagement. Okay, great. Well, let me maybe kick it over to you. You mentioned something very interesting. It was the Global Industry Coordination Network. Right? And these are great partnerships that you have directly with the private sector. And I'll sort of put my innovation hat back on since I'm in the space again. We used to like to do mashups because that's where the magic happens. So when you think about that network that you've been building, how do you see better coordinating, better connecting us as implementing partners to those that you're working to really drive some of that systemic change?
It's a great, right, and it's a great question, Ricardo, and one that's that we're really excited to be moving deeper and deeper into as the Global Industry Coordination Network itself becomes more mature and evolves. It's as an entity, it's really only just about a year old, but it builds from some of the strengths, some that you were familiar with from your time here. Definitely still has some of your fingerprints on the ways in which we look at. No, they're indelible. It's fantastic. The ways in which on the one side of the network that we look at that direct one-on-one sort of strategic corporate relationships. And the agency works with thousands of partners, but really the opportunity here within this construct of what we call these strategic corporate partners is to assign a USAID staff person to directly manage and evolve and move forward that relationship with a handful, about 30 companies, that really are ones that present a lot of complexity and a lot of opportunity in terms of what we do, both with them now and what we would like to be able to do with them more into the future. In addition to that, the other part of the network, as I was mentioning in the opening remarks, is more on the industry side. So again, stepping back from just a one-on-one corporate relationship, looking at the opportunities within industries and within strategic subsectors. And so here we're talking about 38 subsectors within the industry or within industries, and looking at the ones that matter most to the development objectives that the agency has. And this is a really different approach. And so it's one that we're learning as we go through it. But again, a dispersed network of agency staff with a defined responsibility and role to help advance our own internal understanding of where are those industries going, what matters to them, how can we better understand what that then means to us, and how do we find those touch points? And I think that's where, to your question, the real opportunities lie in. If we're building the internal systems, and we know we've got to get this right because our implementing partner community feels the pain points when we don't get the internal systems right, that as we get better, as those systems improve, as they become more modernized or updated, we're expecting that the relationship sort of circle of influence is going to continue to grow. So it's not just about having one single USAID staff person that is strategically coordinating and managing a relationship, let's say, with Coca-Cola. I would expect that where we want to be is in a place where our implementing partner community, who also has direct touch points with Coca-Cola, for example, who has the opportunities to be able to help us understand what's their workload, what are they hearing directly from the company, where are those mashup opportunities where they're starting to find the real value propositions that we can then bring back into the agency and understand, okay, this is what it means in the health sector, or this is what it potentially means in food security, et cetera. So those, that's a space that's going to be a very dynamic space. It's going to be one that is really dependent upon us in terms of having a strong internal systems foundation. But again, I want to go back to the point I made in the opening statement. It's not just about technologies, it's not just about systems, it's not just about people, but it's about all three of those. And to pick up on Temi's point about relationships and how relationships matter, as you know, and many of our partners know this, oftentimes USAID is described as a relationship-based organization, right? You want to get something done, as Temi was saying, you better know that CO who's managing that contract really well, right? Or you want to create a new opportunity, you really need to know where the health office director is at a mission, because they're sitting on top of those resources to be able to make something happen. I want to pull that thread through to what we're talking about here. Relationships matter. Relationships between USAID and the implementing partner community matter, as well as to our private sector, current and future state partners as well. And so we're taking that approach. We've got to invest in the systems. It's a very internal set of the process. It probably doesn't feel like it's a day-to-day reality on the outside looking in, but we feel really strongly, and we feel like there's some real markers in the sand, so to speak, that we continue to improve these systems, that we're going to be able to demonstrate to our partners and to the private sector that we're better informed, more aware, better connected, and that we'll be able to take these principles in terms of relationships. I like what you said, Temi, our relationships, right? And that's an inclusive statement for our partner community, our relationships forward to help drive more development outcomes.
Okay, excellent. I appreciate your acknowledgement and focus on the felt experience, but also the fact that it really comes down to people, right? Say organizations don't do business with organizations, people do business with people. Are you able to tell us either when or give us a sneak peek of the types of industries that you're seeing, maybe the top 3 or 4? And then also, as you think about the relationship manager, how and when is that made public to implementing partners so that we can then begin to engage organically around that?
Definitely not a big reveal moment here. I didn't bring the balloons, and I didn't bring that blue or where we go on it. But as we've evolved the thinking around and the implementation of the Global Industry Coordination Network, what we have again from a company perspective is really a handful of strategic relationships, Fortune 100 companies that we feel are the most well positioned for the agency to be quite honest, test out some of this new thinking, to make sure that the systems that we're investing in and building are going to actually deliver results, not just for us, but that they actually matter to the partners, right? That the partner experience itself is actually going to be recognized. And we're doing a lot in that space through a lot of difficult work across the interagency to be able to openly communicate and regularly communicate and ask our corporate partners, particularly, what's this experience like for you? Is it working? Is it not working? What's not working? Help us better understand where those improvements need to be. You know some of the confines of the Paperwork Reduction Act and other parts of the way the federal government works that hold us back a bit. But what I really want to double down in, rather than going down that list of all of the strategic corporate partners, is recognizing that the agency works with thousands of partners, right? Both at the global level, Fortune 100, Fortune 500 level, but then also at the local level. And a lot of our recent conversations have been with colleagues in the field at missions who are working in, the agribusiness sector or in the financial services sector, or, maybe it's in the technology and communication sector at the country level or at the sub-regional level. And those partnerships matter to what they're doing on the development objectives. And what we're trying to make sure that we can do is set up those systems such that we can overcome these bureaucratic hurdles that we know exist, but be able to make sure that the approaches and the relationship experiences for the local companies, be them in, a small, medium enterprise, all the way up to a Fortune 100, name brand company that we all work with and know, that what we're doing and how we're doing it matters, that we can help deliver better impact through this network, through a better informed network of people with the benefit of the technology behind them, so that, to your point, we're better able as an agency to incorporate the learnings, the lessons, the outcomes that you all in the partner community have to help us better understand and help shape, such that as we go forward, we're just in a place where there's a lot more fidelity around what we can do.
Got it, got it. No, thank you, Adam. I appreciate you not giving me that list, but you did give me a lot to work with. In fact,
As I said, your fingerprints are still on that list, so.
But you know, you're getting sort of to the brass tacks, right, which is the how. And I like the fact that you also brought up, when you think about private sector, right? It's not just the large corporations, it's not just the multinationals. It's really down to the local private sector. I think they have different appetites, different vested interests that we can tap into for sustainable development. And of course, as we think about this in the context of localization, right, their foundation. So then when I think about that, then it all comes down to the how, right? How do we engage and what are some of those tools? And so I want to look to you, Megan, as I think about, what I knew used to be, the GDA APS. We now have a newer version of that and evolved version, the PSCP APS. And so, I'd like for you to share your view on the roles of influencing partners, right? And this tool, the PSCP APS, and how do we use that, thinking about that array of partners, right? As well as where we meet them to bring them on this journey.
Absolutely. So thank you for bringing that up. So the Private Sector Collaboration Pathway APS, or the PSCP APS, is just the first of what we hope are a whole host of tools and approaches that can make it easier to do private sector engagement. And you mentioned the GDA, which has a long history here at USAID, both producing great results that we've done in partnership with IPs and the private sector, and really has leveraged the creativity of our colleagues across the agency. And in order to create the PSCP APS, we really did lean in and listen to those diverse partners, our colleagues, IPs, and others, to take all the creativity that has happened with the GDA and produce a new tool. So the PSCP APS is designed to really lean into the fact that we believe that the future of development is enterprise-driven development, and really provide people a really easy opportunity to collaborate with the private sector. When you mentioned at the beginning, you mentioned how kind of USAID writes what the proposal is. Co-creation is about bringing people around the table, giving them the ability to easily sit around the table and outline kind of what are the diverse goals. And obviously, USAID is about achieving that development goal, but being a little bit more honest about what are the commercial goals that can make that development goal more sustainable and more impactful. And then again, co-creation is, it's not this monolithic thing, it's a series of conversations. You have the ability to have those conversations, understanding what each partner needs, getting a bit more detailed in terms of roles and responsibilities to achieve those diverse but overlapping aims. It's going to be really important to have IPs at the table for that, and that's going to be driven by those people sitting around the table, in particular, our USAID colleagues in our local country offices. One of the things that the PSCP APS did was try to provide a little bit more flexibility. The GDA had a great kind of benchmark of kind of needing one-to-one leverage, which really I think was quite powerful over time. But we wanted to make clear that with our new APS, we are empowering our local partners to define what is best for that particular co-created aim. That might mean bringing in private sector resources, and I say resources carefully, that's not just dollars. That is a whole range of things that can better that development outcome you're jointly trying to see. And I think both Temi and Adam really referenced the fact that there's a lot of respect, certainly here at the table, but especially kind of locally in our country offices. They know the private sector and they know the IPs that can help them unlock it. and what is going to be needed in each session. So the APS is merely a tool to help our partners do what they need to do in terms of co-creation to get to that enterprise-driven development. And we certainly hope the first of many tools. We need to hear from our IP community, you know, what are the mechanistic, the how aspects that could continue to make it easier.
Great. So what I'm really hearing is how you're building in more of that flexibility. And that flexibility is not just in the tools, but also it's going to be in the sort of culture as well. And I think that's going to be important.
Yeah.
Now, I would say we're going to park this one for the conversation, but you know, I love the co-creation model. And I think when I was here, I used to say, we don't have a monopoly on good ideas. So it's important to bring it to the table. But as an implementing partner, there's a cost to co-creation. And that looks different across missions. We're not going to solve that here, but I'd like to just put a little pin in that one. So maybe for future conversation, really, as you're hearing from the implementing partner community, what does that mean? And I think it's really important in the context of localization, when we're going to need to engage and really work with local partners and what that means and the cost to them so that we can be effective. But that said, I know we're running short on time. What I'd like to do before wrapping up is, in the event I missed anything, I'd love to offer each of you a minute just to go through, look at our guests out there and say, if there's anything else you want to make sure that they walk away with today to understand what you're trying to do and what you're expecting of us. I really appreciate that. So back over to you, Dan.
I think the big thing that we're trying to do is understand that as we do private sector engagement, there are roles and things that we can learn as an agency from how we've done it. There are, as I mentioned, there have been instances in which we have the implementing partners are the ones who are leading private sector engagement. They're initiating, they are identifying the companies. They're the ones bringing things to the table and not just implementing. And I think that being able to know and recognize that these are models that USAID is using to do private sector engagement, it helps us broaden our language and it helps us broaden the way that we like our concept of private sector engagement. I think oftentimes when we talk about it, we say, here's what private is working with companies, but the how we do it is that there's so many different ways. There are also instances in which the private sector is, in which implementing partners are the ones really doing the development activities, are the ones working with our local partners, making sure they can do our reporting, making sure that they understand our regulation, making sure that we're able to translate across cultural barriers. And so as we think about the way that we're going to, as an agency, do more private sector engagement, it's really to kind of broaden our concept and broaden the idea and the reality that implementing partners in many times are part of our models, it's part of the ways that we do this. This is on the day-to-day level, the channels and vehicles that we're using. And so, yeah, I think moving forward, what you guys will hopefully feel is not only the ability and flexibility to identify more opportunities, particularly when implementing partners are the ones leading these engagements, to find, we can say, here's what we want to do as an agency, but we're not going to be out in the field every day. We're going to rely on implementing partners to find those opportunities to be able to say, hey, I think I've got a company, or I think I've got a local stakeholder that really is meeting the parameters of what we think USAID is trying to accomplish. And I think that that's powerful in terms of helping negotiate deals, broker deals, close them, and really bring people to the table. So I just wanted to say, you are part of the ecosystem in terms of how USAID does private sector engagement, and we want to learn from that. And so just once again, just thank you for continuing to be the eyes and ears and pushing the agency forward in terms of doing more creative, more innovative things. And we hope to continue to have more forums like this, where we are, you guys, as Ricardo says, holding us accountable and kind of nudging us in the direction of maybe some immediate pain points.
Couple of final thoughts. One of the things that we often talk about, and I know that many of you in the partner community have experienced this, and it's something we should be proud of. Over the last 5 years, we've been able to look at the trajectory of having private sector engagement, have a policy anchor in what the agency does everywhere and on any sector that it works in. And that was a huge achievement. And that's been a 5-year period. We're almost at the 5-year anniversary of the private sector engagement policy. But if you take a long, hard look, as we've done at that policy, it talks a lot about the what of private sector engagement and moves beyond sort of traditional models of partnership into the broader realm of engagement, but it doesn't get into the details of how does the agency and our partner community do it well, do it better, do it with more impact. And so a lot of our focus as we've been talking here is on wrestling with some of those internal breakdowns, some of those difficult bureaucratic processes that get in the way of how we can do private sector engagement better. And so that's really where we're focused. We're shifting to that. How do we do this better? How do we, USAID, how do we as a partner community together do this better with our private sector partners, with collaborators from business and industry? And at the end of the day, that should be fun work. And we can actually take a step back away from the fact that we do work in a bureaucracy. We are part of the federal government. There's a lot of rules and regulations about what we do and how we do it. But this should be a really fun, energy-driven part of what we all do in terms of how we collaborate, how we learn, how we better understand what the opportunities, what the challenges are. And I would end with saying, we want to continue hearing from you. We've heard a lot from you. You've really helped inform a lot of our fundamental thinking around the technology solutions as well as the process solutions. And we want to keep learning from you because we know that many of you have been doing this. You do it better than many other organizations. And we need to make sure that we've got those right feedback loops with you as a partner community, as well as with our private sector partners, so that we're hearing from them, we're learning from them, and we're continually staying nimble and iterating how we develop these systems.
Excellent. Thank you for that. And Megan, bring us home.
Great. So, I mean, listening across all these comments, I'm probably struck by 3 things. So PSC policy was all about doing more private sector engagement, more diverse private sector engagement, and making sure that it's more impactful and sustainable. The IP community has really been kind of the leading tip of the spear for that for a long time. But I do think that the way that we're doing private sector engagement is absolutely evolving in order to reach that aim. And our roles and responsibilities are going to need to evolve accordingly. And as Adam said, we really need to find better forms for more discussions, more innovations, and to Tim's point, more aligned data so that we can really be smart about understanding what type of private sector engagement works best in which context and to which situation. And I just want to acknowledge that private sector engagement is going to evolve. The work with USAID is only one small part of the private sector engagement that is going to evolve. I can see IP communities, they're doing it already, working directly with private sector partners, working directly with partner governments and other stakeholders to get to the aims that we all want to seek. And that's going to be quite an evolution. And certainly this is just the first of what we hope are many listening sessions so we can get this insight. But I'm really excited about tapping into the ingenuity and just the creativity that's going to be needed as we evolve into this future we all want to see.
Excellent, excellent. Well, look, let me say, a huge thank you for this riveting initial conversation on behalf of the community partner community. I realize and recognize that there are a lot of opportunities for improvement within USAID, but I appreciate the way that you're leaning in, right, in a comprehensive way to sort of address that. And that includes engaging with us. So thank you for obviously the transparency, as well as some of the insights in terms of the evolution that we're taking. And as I look to the implementing partner community, I'll say to colleagues, competitors, but all of us are compatriots in the good fight, in this journey together, right? I think that that's really what binds us together. So I'll encourage us as we go into these next sessions, continue to bring forth our strong relationships, our creative ideas, and our knowledge so that we can help shape, right? Not just the direction and the how the engagement, the agency engages, but really shape the outcomes that we're all here to make sure that we're driving in the development. So thank you for that. I appreciate your time. I appreciate everyone's attention, and I'll turn it back over to our moderator, Cole.
Thank you.
Thank you, everyone, and really appreciate all of you guys taking the time to be on the panel with us today. So first off, thank you, Ricardo, Temi, Adam, and Megan. This has been a wonderful, wonderful discussion. I hope it provided a great framework for us as we move into this next section of the event, our breakout sessions. I'd like to invite all of you to please stay online, because I know breakouts scare people away, but we're going to do some deep dives into some of the topic areas led by our implementing partners themselves. So in a few moments, you'll be able to self-select into breakout rooms of your choice by clicking on the breakout room icon in the menu tray. We have around 30 minutes for these presentations and discussions. So I do ask that you please move quickly into the sessions. I'd like to remind everyone of a few things as we move into the breakout room sessions. One is please be respectful and constructive in the conversations that you're having. Breakout rooms are not being recorded. I'll say that again. So if that is an issue for you, don't worry about it. Please stay muted and keep off camera unless you're speaking. And then please use the raise hand feature to ask questions or pose remarks. And with that, I think we have the sessions listed up on the screen. So a representative from SID-US and USAID will remain in the main session to help anyone experiencing any issues. But with that, I ask that we open up the breakout rooms and we can all move to our relative rooms. Thank you so much again.
There's no audio.
No, we can't hear you.
Can you guys hear me now?
Yes.
Yes.
Okay. So we'll just start on here. So I was just saying, welcome back, everyone. I hope you guys had a informative breakout sessions. I wanted to say a huge thank you to our implementing partners for designing these sessions today. And I would like to invite them back to the stage here to provide some very brief takeaways, very high level, about a minute each from each room, to share out with the rest of the group. So to kick things off, can we move things over to the demonstrating value group? I don't know if Steve or Kristen would like to share out from that group.
Yeah, no, thank you. We had a really rich conversation. I think a few key points that came up with the group that I think may be surprising, right? There's the usual things around, well, you know, of course, around supply chains and market linkages and those sorts of things, which are all really important around the value that international development actors can bring on the sustainability and ESG agenda. But I think a couple of things that really jumped out that may be less anticipated would be around inclusivity. We had a number of folks bring up both concrete examples and as well as the importance of inclusivity, which is something that we certainly see on the private sector side, on the corporate side. This is a high priority, whether it's women's economic empowerment or engaging marginalized populations or DEIA. And so that's just something I would highlight from our group. And I will keep it short and sweet and hand it back to you.
Perfect. Thank you so much, Steve. Great. Can we move on to the evolving roles session? I believe we have Avery or Daniela on the line.
Sure. So we get a really great overview of all the different ways that USAID is expanding and thinking about relationship management and how that's evolving through different roles and structures within the agency. And so I think a lot of it now is for us as IPs, as we're implementing USAID activities, or even during the capture process, as we're starting to do that outreach, how do we reflect some of those principles and some of those structures within our own spheres of influence? And so thinking about how do we echo that felt experience that USAID is really trying to achieve through its relationship management approaches. How do we look to invest the resources and time and energy to have strong relationships, healthy relationships that are going to drive some of the development results and business objectives that we're looking to support? And how do we really try and better understand where the private sector is coming from, what motivates them, what incentivizes them, where does it make sense for them to have a role in these different development issues, and how can we be the ones helping to bridge that and make that happen, as well as being those translators between what the private sector is doing and what USAID is doing.
Great. Thank you so much, Avery. I want to go ahead and turn things over to, and I'm moving very quickly, I apologize. Danny, I see you on. Would you like to do a quick share out from the data session?
Sure. Thanks so much, Cole. Very quickly, we didn't have enough time, but it's the start of a conversation. We really looked at bridging the evidence gap and looking at recent trends, like knowing that USAID is increasingly working with local and non-traditional partners. So, for example, like accelerators, intermediaries, asset management firms, and other investors. So the expectation for implementing partners is to really elevate these firms and serve more as facilitators. And given this, how can IPs ensure the data is captured accurately? So we discussed like the opportunities and the challenges, like the opportunities being the impact and especially enduring results and ensuring that the results are successful and sustainable. But at the same time, the challenges is that we're sometimes 2-3 levels removed. And, we want to make sure that our partners, our local partners, our investors are part of the discussion when it comes to capturing data, and they've bought into the process. And also looking at, the contribution approach versus an attribution approach, and ensuring that we focus on the outcomes, looking at outcome-focused data that may exist beyond the life of a USAID program.
Awesome.
A lot more to discuss, but I'll leave it at that.
Yeah. Thank you so much, Danny. And last but not least, Brett, would you like to give us a quick readout from your group?
Yeah, so we covered different ways to enhance the partner experience and utilizing USAID grant funds oriented towards private sector engagement in terms of how you design, think through the process and the design of an RFA all the way to award. A few things that kind of came up, there's 2 main points. Is one, there's a lot of work that still needs to be done in terms of sensitizing implementer teams, private sector partners, and as well as USAID on how to go through the entire process and that journey, particularly as you're looking at local private sector partners that really aren't aware of how to engage with USAID, and a lot of the requirements out of an RFA or an RFI are kind of new to them, and how do you kind of walk them through that journey. The other thing that we came up with, and this is very similar to what we say within PSE, where engage your AOR or your COR often, or engage OAA often, is it's the importance of having both technical teams within a program as well as the compliance and award management teams of a program to be there across the entire journey, to make sure the design of the final activity and award is something that works from a technical perspective as well as a compliance perspective, so you don't lose time going backwards when someone brings new eyes, to the award in the late stage of the process. So those are kind of the 2 points that we had. Probably a lot more conversation that we could have.
Great. Thank you so much, Brett. And thank you to everyone who took the time to pull together these breakout sessions for us. In the spirit of time, I'm going to hope that you know I really all appreciate the time that you put into this. There's much more to be said here, but I would like to also invite the Executive Director of the PSE Hub, Michael Metzler, to the room to provide us with some closing remarks. So I'll turn it over to you, Michael.
Thanks, Cole, and thanks, everybody. Let me just start by first thanking Ricardo for taking the time to come. I initially suggested Ricardo to come and join us. But then when I saw the reception he got coming back into the building today, I was like, maybe it wasn't the best idea to get Ricardo back in, who I currently had the job that he was in at the time. I don't know how I should read that. No, Ricardo and I are old friend or longtime friends, not old friends, longtime friends. So happy to see him here. Really thank you for your time. Want to thank SID, long-running relationship and partnership with SID. Today is the latest manifestation of that. And so we really want to thank our partners at SID. And of course, all of you. All our time is valuable. We asked a lot of it this morning. We hope it was valuable for you. We really appreciate your time. Probably the most used phrase this morning was this beginning of a conversation. So I will repeat it. We hope to continue it. We have been working hard at PSE Modernize. We are at a point in its evolution that we thought now would be a particular time to bring you into the conversation now that we have some of these process reforms pretty far ahead. In fact, in this room, in this seat, sat the Deputy Administrator, Paloma Adams-Allen, yesterday, where we, for the first time in the agency's history, demoed an enterprise CRM system for the entire agency, which is one of many, many things we're working on under Modernize. And we will bring that to the community when it's ready to be brought there. But just one example of what we're trying to do in terms of the systems itself in the agency. We started Modernize with some very simple questions, right? You heard Adam earlier talk about the criticality of relationship management. Everybody agrees with that. But when we asked ourselves, are we positioned to do relationship management as well as it needs to be done? Do we have the systems and the processes in place? The answer was a resounding no. Do we have the data systems in place in this agency for a future where we're scaling private sector engagement? The answer to the person was absolutely not, right? And so as we looked at the HR systems that Temi talked about, to the budget systems that we're trying to solve through Edge Fund, we're trying to get to a yes in all those questions. We all know the systems were never built for this kind of work, certainly not to do it at scale. And so within the hub, we just see our role at this point in the development of private sector engagement in the agency is to play that role to upgrade and modernize all these systems. Some of those systems will directly impact the work you do, which is why we are now bringing you into the conversation around these systems. We want to hear back from you, honest feedback on all the improvements we're making, where they touch your work and your organizations, whether it's having that positive impact. We will continue to do it. And maybe I'll just end real quick in the interest of time. We are very gratified and I think validated in this approach. There's a large interagency conversation going on right now about partnerships. The most formal one, I think, that's ever been taken up by the NSC. And most of the conversations around that interagency table is exactly about what we're trying to do, which is the systems themselves, not the programs, not the partnerships. I think we've all have evolved to a point where the culture's there, the know-how's there in terms of how to engage, but the systems themselves are really dragging us all down. So we are happy to take up what is a pretty challenging and daunting task within a federal bureaucracy to upgrade it, but we're starting to see some results on that now. We look forward to engaging with you for further results. And again, we look forward to continuing the conversation. Thank you again for joining us this morning.
Thank you, everyone. And please, a quick reminder to fill out the survey in the chat. We're collecting some additional feedback. We want to acknowledge and thank you all for your questions. We're trying to gather as much information from the breakout sessions and from the main session as possible to kind of help us navigate where we can engage with IPs and the IP community further. So much more to come, and we really appreciate all of your time. Thank you to all of our implementing partners here today. Thank you to SID-US, and we'll talk to you all soon.
See everybody.